AI is a great thought partner. Learning to form great questions is the key to making use to AI, and asking and forming great questions is a critical skill that needed regardless of what they do in the future. So trying to harness the power of it, if you will, as a thought partner at the scholastic level, I think is a good use. To say that we're going to just ban it from kids' use, I think is like saying we're going to ban a calculator. When I was in school, the internet is the devil. That may be partially true, but it's also a great resource when used properly.
You're listening to the smartsocial.com podcast, your trusted source for real-world tactics that keep students safe and help them to shine online. I'm your host, Josh Oakes. Each week, I sit down with K-12 superintendents, district leaders, and community voices who are shaping digital safety. We discuss wins, struggles, and strategies used to guide students so they can be safe and successful online.
Hi, I'm Mitch Young, Superintendent of Schools in Forsyth County, Georgia. We're a bedroom community just outside of Atlanta, northeast of Atlanta. We've got about 55,000 students across 43 schools here in Forsyth County.
Superintendent, it's so great to have you here today on the smartsocial.com podcast. Welcome to all of our national listeners, viewers, whether you're on YouTube or a podcast software. We want to welcome you here at smartsocial.com. And we're so excited today to ask the superintendent some safety questions, some dialogue starter questions. We want to get the lay of the land. Now, for all the parents listening, you might be a parent, you might be a superintendent, you might be somebody incredible in between, whether it's a staff member or we love you guardians who are helping to take care of kiddos, especially grandparents. We're talking about safety so your kids can someday be wildly successful using the tools that we'll discuss. And for all of our superintendents who've been on the podcast, we're so grateful. They'll all tell you, hey, our community is unique, but it seems like for some reason, Smart Social knows what's going on in our community because every kid's begging for these devices. And for all you listeners, I'm holding up an iPhone, but it could be an Android, could be an iPad, it could be any other device. And we seem to have the same needs that the kids are requesting, begging for, and it's all because of these apps and devices. And today we humbly come to you with ideas and strategies. There is no shame today. It's just how can we protect kids? Superintendent, I'm so excited you're here. I actually want to give you a little bit of a fun pop quiz. I give this to every superintendent on the podcast, and I would love to ask you, how did you start? What role did you start your educational career in?
Well, if you go all the way back, I would say I started out as a little kid trying to be like his dad, who was a career educator. So I think you can get a lot of stories probably out there from career educators like myself that went into the family business, and that's what I did. But my actual first job was teaching at Florida State University High School, known as Florida High, lab school on campus in Tallahassee. And I started out as a history teacher and basketball coach.
I love that. I've never heard that. The family business. What a great thing. Did you start as a teacher in the family business, if you will?
So I did. I grew up in Pennsylvania, but went to school down, like I said, in Tallahassee at FSU. And my first job there was teaching a couple of periods of world history. And it was a K-12 school. So I also had a fifth grade PE class. And that's how I got my feet wet. It was the same school that I did my student teaching at. And so I was really blessed that they gave me an opportunity to stay on as a teacher there. And it was a great experience.
That's terrific. For all of our audience members, you know that all of our superintendents and district leaders, they started out helping kids, and now they're leading a staff that helps protect kids and lead them to the next generation. So let's put that hat on that whether it's PE or world history. I'm so excited here, Superintendent, to get your feedback on our ideas and thoughts. So after 250 to 260 plus district leader conversations in 43 plus states here on the Smart Social podcast, we've heard some consistent trends from your peers nationwide. I would be honored to get your feedback. Here's the challenges we're hearing in the 25-26 school year and beyond. We're hearing that, Josh, there's a lot of hidden direct messages in these apps. There's dangerous TikTok challenges we think go away and they come back. There are group text messages that cause a lot of fear of missing out and sometimes some bullying. We're hearing from superintendents that students are now chatting with AI as therapists, which is so scary, or unknown people online, which is just as scary. There's inappropriate content that might happen off campus over the weekend that causes a real problem Monday morning on campus for principals and schools. And then there's screen time and phone addiction that we hear from superintendents. Hey, Josh, if we could just fix the screen time and phone addiction, a lot of this would melt away slowly, if we will, because if kids were less addicted to their phones, they wouldn't be on some of these messages and such. Superintendent, I'd love to get your feedback and set me straight. Is there something we're missing here, or are there any trends you're seeing on the screen right now that are in your neck of the woods?
No, we don't suffer from any of these problems, Josh. I mean, no. The sad truth is every single thing that you've highlighted on there are challenges that we're wrestling with right now. From the TikTok challenges inevitably lead to discipline issues. The off-campus activities make their way back to campus, which lead to disciplinary issues. You say students chatting with AI or unknown people. I mean, it really is societal, but I think it's magnified when you've got, like we do, 55,000 kids and 8,000 teachers all in buildings together each day. It all really rises to the top. And yeah, everything that you've highlighted on here, absolutely the trends that we're seeing as well.
Yeah. And to all of our audience members, you're not alone. If you're struggling with any of these, it's normal. And this is why the superintendent was so gracious to join us here today. It takes a village. And we have these conversations so that if there's a little nugget you have here, use it, steal our ideas, protect your community. Okay, Superintendent, we're on the hot seat. I'd love to ask you some rapid fire questions here and get your deep dive answers. You can take it wherever you want. I'm just honored that you're here today. Some leaders nationwide and some of your peers that I've interviewed have mentioned that certain social media trends have caught their staff or themselves off guard, and that is normal. Again, no shame here today. It's just we're trying to keep up with the trends. What kinds of social media issues tend to challenge your staff when it comes to student tech use?
Well, I will tell you, it's the next one. And I don't mean to say that in a stark answer, but it seems that every time that we've caught up to what the current trend is, it's like whack-a-mole, or it's the little boy putting his finger in the dam. That every time one of these hits and we finally get our heads wrapped around it and sort of find out where it's coming from, the next one pops up. And so the challenge, quite frankly, holistically, is trying to how do you get ahead of the next challenge? And that's, people that worry about students not being creative thinkers in this world of AI or, problem solvers. If some of these students or the people behind the social media, shifted their energies to solving real problems that would help our country and help our community, my God, they're great thinkers. The things they come up with that catch us off guard are evidence that we've got brilliant people behind this. That's probably the greatest frustration, is that just as you sort of grasp, it's like trying to, as they say, grasp water. You try to grab a hold of it and it's right through the fingers.
Yeah, we hear that nationwide, right? A lot of parents are like, why are kids so much more clever and entrepreneurial than us? And they figure out there's a problem. I'm going to get around it, whether it's a firewall or how do I get into this app? Yeah, you're so right. Grasping water. I think that's a really good key takeaway. The next question for you, when you talk with parents and teachers in your community, in your district, what do you think is the hardest things for families to keep up with? Is it social media changes that seem to happen weekly, new AI tools that pop up monthly, or overall screen habits that we're seeing students develop?
Yeah, Josh, I would, as you presented these, I don't think it's any single one of them. I think what you've shared is all three of those. I would kind of take them in reverse order, if you would. But the overall screen habits, we have finally systemically begun to address this. I think like everybody out there, our leadership team here at the district, as well as our Board of Education, about a year ago, it was this time a year ago that I bought everybody a copy of The Anxious Generation. I insisted that folks read that and watch The Social Dilemma on Netflix. And it supercharged a community conversation for us. And it really began with screen habits and how that had overtaken unstructured playtime. And so that led to some questions about, okay, what are we as a school system doing to promote increased screen time? And how do we dial that back? And that resulted not just in our school system, but actually a statewide law that is called the distraction-free learning, which I think a lot of states took up for kindergarten through 8th graders. Our school system extended that law through 12th grade. And again, it was really to try to, first and foremost, deal with some of the challenges that social media presents throughout the school day, and group texting and the bullying and all the things that the technology is being misused for. But secondly, or 1A, if you would, priority was to try to bring down the amount of screen time that our kids have and get them socializing with each other. Yeah, I'm happy to report that we've got our first semester under our belt, and the amount of games of Uno going on in our cafeteria right now, and board games and conversations. When you walk through our high schools at lunchtime and you kind of compare that visual to what we were seeing just 2 years ago, it is remarkable that the social interaction that's improved. And I think our parents are totally on board with that. But that also brings up the challenge that they have parenting-wise. And this is not a judgment. I'm a parent too. And it's that idea of this generation, particularly in an affluent community like I'm fortunate to live in, there's an entitlement that goes with that. And that device has become an extension of a kid's hand or arm it's almost like an additional appendage that they have. And so our coming into this, the policy route has actually been very, very welcomed by parents. It's actually giving them, some standing to say, hey, you can't use these at school. We're going to cut down on it from home. And for the first time, parents are sort of all on the same page. So as opposed to keeping up with the Joneses on getting their children phones, we're now starting to hear the keeping up with the Joneses on limiting. And we like where that pendulum's starting to go.
Such great tips, Superintendent. I love, I'm taking notes because I get a great opportunity to learn from you. For all of our audience members, The Anxious Generation, a wonderful book you might consider picking up. The author, Jonathan Haidt, I believe, he talks a lot about the anxiety that kids are getting ever since 2007 to 2010 when the iPhone or any device your kids pick up really got good at putting the internet and addictive qualities in their hand 24/7, where they're almost sleeping with the phone. But now he said something really interesting. Superintendent, I'd love to get your view on this because you're such an expert in the field. Jonathan Haidt came out, I think it was like 2 months ago, and he said, I wrote that book and it's become very famous in teaching parents how to reduce anxiety in their kids by giving them, as you said, unstructured social time with their friends, right? Getting back to being bored and creative and socializing. But he said there's something I didn't see happening that he didn't say I missed it in the book, but it's just as big, if not bigger. And he said it's the attention span he's seeing in kids. They're reducing and we're becoming goldfish in a way. He didn't say goldfish, but I'm going to say it. And we're starting to look at for all of our audience members, I want you to think about this. Think of the last time you sat down with your kids and watched a 2-hour movie. Now it's all TV shows. And now it's YouTubes that are 10 minutes, 7 minutes. And now it's TikToks or Reels that are 90 seconds. And the teens that are in our internship program where they teach a lot of our program, they're saying, Josh, in the first 3 seconds, I know if I'm going to watch that TikTok or not. I'm just going through, is it interesting enough, right? Superintendent, are you seeing this phenomenon of adults? I'm going to say that my attention span is getting shorter. Adults and kids alike, our attention span is changing?
Oh, without question. If I may real quick go back to Jonathan's book, The Anxious Generation, obviously there's what we're talking about with students and how we're raising them in that and the changes in parenting. The interesting thing for me in our observation of this community is the anxious generation, I think at the surface tends to point to the kids, but I really think the anxious generation is the generation of parents that we have right now. Because when you go back to what's driving this anxiety, I think a lot of it is fear that is felt by parents. And this is the first generation of parents that have been really raised on devices themselves. And so with the attention span issue you talk about, I think it's just as much with the adults as it is kids. And we're seeing that now. And the result in that is, as you've said, the inability to concentrate for any length of time, even on things that you may like. I'm guilty. I'm 52 years old. I sit down with a book, and that may be a book I've been just dying to dig into. And if my phone buzzes, I can't help but look away. I can't help. And I've got a fully formed, as much as it can be, a fully formed, prefrontal lobe. But for folks under the age of 25 years old, that there is no doubt in my mind that is impacting the long-term development and the ability to focus. And so, yeah, we see that in schools. We see that in parent meetings when we sit down with parents. If you join us at a board meeting and you sit where I do, where you get to look out at the audience, it is this, and I think continued research needs to be done in the impact of this screen time and these devices and the constant notifications and what that has done to be able to focus.
Yeah, I really appreciate your vulnerability. And nationwide, for all of our listeners, this is something that's happening in every community. And I know a lot of parents or district leaders will say, my community is different. And maybe it is. Maybe you have like really neat things that are awesome about your part of the country. We love that. But these devices really are something that makes us a whole village, which is so scary. So Superintendent, my next question for you, we often hear schools say that they may feel pulled in many directions when it comes to digital safety engagement. There's just so much going on. And now the schools, the districts, the staff need to be experts on so much. How can parents and the community work together to not only support, but learn from and help school staff to help really the students build healthy screen time and social media habits?
Yeah, I think this is it's a huge question, Josh, and I mean that from this standpoint. I think looking at social media or cell phones or personal devices in isolation and kind of seek and destroy sort of thing is never going to be an effective approach. One of the things that I'm super proud of our school system is part of our strategic plan is we've got this idea of one of our major elements of that is social and emotional well-being of our students. When you talk about school safety, for the last 150 years, school safety had to do with fire alarms and physical safety. What we've seen the last 20 years is safety really means not just physical, but psychological, social, and emotional safety. And so when I say this is a bigger question, I think it's really incumbent upon school systems, and this is a top-down, a bottom-up, and a 360 degrees all the way around idea that you have got to have a culture where safety is a priority, and that safety is defined as more than just physical safety. And that's a paradigm shift for a lot of families, for a lot of teachers, a lot of principals, a lot of school boards and superintendents. But when you create a culture of safety, where safety is the priority, and you define that safety as more than just physical, now what you've done is you've brought the conversation to all these things that you and I are discussing today. And what is the impact of a cell phone, not just on my child's behavior one-on-one, but in the overall culture of safety we're trying to provide? What is a tool like that going to do? And when it's mass used, what does that do to the overall culture that we're trying to develop? And as we've shifted that conversation to the cultural piece, we have invited parents in. I have an advisory council that's made up of students. I have a separate advisory council that's made up of parents, and a third advisory council that's made up of the community and business partners that we enjoy in our system. And so last year, we made this topic a primary topic, the idea of safety, of big safety as I've described it to you. And that is where really from the parent group and the teacher group, as you can imagine, that really drove the conversations to where we ended up with this policy to kind of go after personal devices. Now, I thought it was vitally important that we also got the student perspective. And those conversations were, as you can imagine, with a lot of high school seniors and their juniors and seniors, what are you talking about? Why would you limit this? We continued that discussion for a year with their input. We had a town hall where we had students and parents and teachers and staff all come and share with the board their feelings. And at the end of the day, what we found was a very reasonable sort of compromised approach, if you will, not compromised that we didn't take phones and just put them back in the students' hands, but like at the high school level, we allow our students to check their phones during their lunch period, because a lot of them have jobs after school. A lot of them, are in sports after school and want to check their practice time and so forth. We tried to be reasonable with that. That's the only time of day they're allowed to check. They're not out in the hallways. They're not out in the classrooms. When that first bell rings at the start of the day and the last bell rings, the only break our high schooler gets to check their phone is during the lunch period. And I know that doesn't go perfectly with what Jonathan shared with us in his book, but what we have found as we go into the lunchrooms is you don't have large numbers of kids sitting and looking at their phones because their peers are not on their phones throughout the day, so they're not missing anything. And that ultimately, that FOMO is what they're is what they're most anxious about. And when they realize they're not missing anything, it's freed them up to engage their classmates. And it's not perfect. Don't get me wrong. You'll still see students on their phones, and we have to address that. But it really has been a major change. But my point is it all started as a community and safety priority issue.
Yeah, I love that. Creating safety as a part of the culture. And what I love that you're doing too, that the audience is learning about, is you're doing the tough parenting, if you will, the tough school decisions to make sure you're doing what's best for the kids at 25. And that's one of our dreams, is how can your kids be the most ready to be employable, to be mature and ready for the real world at 25. That might mean that they're a little disappointed. They don't get to check their phone every 13 seconds in class. They only get it once a day or whatever is best for the kid. So I love that you're doing that. For all of our audience members, you know that Smart Social hosts weekly free live events where we help parents navigate these digital devices that kids have. And I want to bring up a question that we got from a parent last week. Parents are often asking us, hey, Josh, what advice would you give a student to help them recognize some of the red flags of a dangerous stranger? Well, rather than hearing from the superintendent and I, let's hear from a real student in high school about how she might help a friend recognize these red flags.
If I had a friend talking online to a stranger, I think that I would feel a little bit uncomfortable with the whole situation. I would advise against it because so many indirect issues can come from that, and it could cause something to be worse than if they had just unadded them in the first place. Some red flags that I would have to advise them to cut it off with this person or to stop engaging would be if the person starts to get very involved in their personal life and they seem to be very intrigued in what's going on with them and wanting to know all the little details about what they do and who they are, and just very personal details and things that you wouldn't normally share with a stranger in real life. If they're very persistent and constantly wanting to talk to my friend or constantly trying to be involved in their life or wanting to speak to them, I feel like that's kind of a red flag. Another thing would be if they ask them to ever meet them anywhere in person right from the start, if they feel a sense of being uncomfortable or their intuition is just saying it's wrong, or if my intuition is saying something feels wrong with this, then I think that's a major red flag.
So parents, remember, you can come out to our free, amazing weekly live parent events. We have real teens who teach the program. So it actually becomes something where a lot of moms and dads will tell me, I just brought my teenage daughter here and she didn't roll her eyes because she wanted to learn from her peers. And then the last thing you get is, forget about the premium parent newsletter. There's dialogue starters to talk with your kids. You just saw that teenager say, here's the things that I think are wrong if things are going wrong. Okay, so parents, remember, if you are struggling at all, here at smartsocial.com, we're here to help. We help parents keep kids safe and successful. If you're struggling on any of these apps, we have an army of parents creating free resources for you. We have the best parent guides on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat, Fortnite, Minecraft, Roblox, Netflix, WhatsApp, 450 more, but they're not just in English. They're also in Espanol, Mandarin, and 9 other languages. No one is left behind. We use all of my Disney brand marketing background for the power of good. Also, we've got live events that are phenomenal. They're happening every week. Most of the time, they're twice a week. Is Screen Time Pulling Your Child Away? This one's in Espanol. Safe and Successful, How Teens and Families Are Using AI. You've got about 8 guest experts in every one of these events. They're very carefully crafted. They're about 45 minutes long. People are saying they're very, very vibrant. One of my trademarks is Shine Online, helping your child build a positive online footprint. This is what we're known for. Again, taking all my Disney background and building it to protect your kid for their future. Parents, we've also got the hottest, most urgent trends that we cover each and every week, whether it's YouTube's new gambling and violence rules, teen AI misuse, online predators. We're fighting the good fight for you. And in 2 or 3 minutes, if you take a look at our website, it's going to keep your kids safer. There's a lot more replays and everything else. We're here for you. And again, we hope you'll join us for one of the events. Okay, Superintendent, we're back with you. My question for you is how do you see AI helping schools and students if it's used the right way? And what guardrails do you think are the most important to put in place early?
Yeah, I will tell you, this is probably for those of us in education right now, Josh, the topic everybody is buzzing about is how do we wrap our heads around this and make the best use of it without setting our students up to lose their ability to think critically. Our teachers are worried about plagiarism and all those types of things. What I have shared, I believe teachers should be using this for when it comes to classroom instruction is the fact that AI is a great thought partner. Learning to form great questions is the key to making use to AI, and asking and forming great questions is a critical skill that's needed regardless of what they do in the future. So trying to harness the power of it, if you will, as a thought partner at the scholastic level, I think is a good use. To say that we're going to just ban it from kids' use, I think is like saying we're going to ban a calculator. When I was in school, the internet is the devil. That may be partially true, but it's also a great resource when used properly. So digital citizenship, in terms of how to use AI is what's next. It is probably the number one thing that we get from our teachers is a fear of just not feeling like they're ahead of the curve on this one. So obviously classroom level, there's a lot of work to be done there. I think when we start to introduce it to teachers, and as we've been doing for a little over a year now, helping to develop lesson plans, incredibly useful for that. But the guardrail that's so vital to this is making sure that you're checking the sources of all the information that you get so that the information you're using can be vetted. And I think that is a step that if you're in a hurry the night before class and you're whipping together a lesson plan, your activities the next day are fraught with peril if you haven't done your homework on checking the sources of that. So that's a major point of emphasis that we have with our teachers. I think that's probably the scary thing, in a society right now where the culture wars are continuing to rage, is you might pull some great fanciful lesson plan ideas off of there, that may have a real agenda behind them, whether it's far left, far right, or, or anything else. So that sourcing it's really important to learn how to check the sources of that. I think from the business side of the school system, I think there's great uses here that I'm really excited about. The data lakes that you can develop with all your different systems and having a place that you can go to kind of pull all that information and quickly retrieve it in a usable fashion to make decisions, to analyze how discipline's being conducted, to analyze how money's being spent. I think the thing that I've recently learned is the importance of making sure the pipelines of that information are clean before you create a data lake. And I think in all of our departments right now, we've got our folks working to make sure all of the systems we're using, the data that's being put into them is accurate, because what we pull out is only going to be as accurate as that data that's gone into it. So we've got a lot of work to do at all three levels, at the district level, at the teacher level, and at the student level.
Yeah, that's very fair. I love that honesty. And I think nationwide, from what I'm hearing, very similar struggles all over the country. Parents, none of us have it all figured out. We're trying to figure out whether it's sources, whether it's a biased AI, right? Like it tells you things that you have to audit. I think the superintendent's right on. Like there's a gut check that has to happen with kids, with parents, with everybody. But I also love the nuance that you said that I just want to double click into before we get to our last question. Parents, if you're worried about AI, it's kind of like a car in our view. It doesn't mean that, oh, my kid will never drive, they'll never ride in a car. No, we need to keep them safe because a car is going to be important to get them where they want to go. Just like the superintendent said, a calculator. People used to say, you'll never use a calculator, that's bad. Well, now we're using it. I have a degree in finance, but I still have a calculator right here when I need to do advanced stuff. Do I do gut checks to make sure it's right and everything's amazing? Yeah, but I still have an amazing little device, whether it's on my phone or these old school calculators are great. I don't have to open an app. Don't get distracted by apps. But I think it is really important for us to know how to do this back of the napkin, as they say. One of our live events, parents, that I do hope you'll come out to, the Safe and Successful AI event, we have a 5th grade teacher or an 8th grade teacher, one of the two. He teaches us it's really good earlier in the writing process to brainstorm using AI. The superintendent said it's a thought partner, and teachers are saying that a lot. Earlier in the writing process, it's okay. Let your teacher know, get your teacher's approval, get your parents' approval. We want to increase learning and reduce cheating here at Smart Social and all of our partners. So I just absolutely love what the superintendent's saying. And then one last thing that we're seeing as a trend is a lot of teachers, the dream of most teachers is, how do I get more FaceTime with the kiddos to support them, to love them, to get them to learn more? And creating lesson plans and individual educational plans in AI saves time so you can spend more time with the kids and tutor them, right, in person. So we're just loving that AI. There's a lot of perils, just like with a vehicle. You give your kids the keys to the vehicle and you don't teach them how to use it at the age of 16, very dangerous. But if we do it with them, and we say we're going to keep you safe so you'll be successful driving this vehicle on your own, seems to be the best approach. Superintendent, I want to ask you this question. We're hearing that schools and districts are now sharing the responsibility for online safety. Again, 10, 20 years ago, there was no digital safety. What was this, right? When you started in the family business, as you say, I love that phrase. What does effective collaboration look like when you're addressing social media or digital issues in your district? And that's the collaboration between not only teachers, but also your collaboration with parents and parent ed nights.
Yeah, and I'm just going to tell you, Josh, it's an area that we're still trying to get better at. I think one of the things that we've done with our community for many years, long before I was here, and I've been here 19 years now, but we have always done a great job at our local schools of having information nights and bringing parents to the table. And quite frankly, they're not hitting the mark anymore. There's too many things pulled at parents' time and families' time. Like with so many things throughout history in the school district, the parents that most need to be there aren't necessarily the ones who show up. And so we're having to be really creative about where and how can we find parents at their point of interest. And so getting out of the box as we go forward, you're going to see us begin to do things where we may have information sessions during a halftime of a game, or where parents are gathered at the soccer field sitting in their car while their kids are, out there chasing the soccer ball around. This would be a great time for us to get them a QR code to watch a short video snippet. And so we're having to go very digital, and we're actually expanding our communications department to be able to do some of those things in a more proactive manner. But it's something that I love what the work that you're doing out there. First off, I'm so humbled and honored that you'd invite us to be with you today. But the work you're doing, Josh, out there to help parents is tremendous, but it's also great help to those of us who are trying to come up with ideas for how we can make better inroads to our families to make that collaboration more effective.
Yeah. Well, I'm just honored that you take some time with us. You're doing a great job. Superintendent, you got a busy day. You got 50,000+ kids that you're protecting, nurturing, leading. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to spend with us.
It's an honor to be here, and I look forward to watching all the great work that you guys are doing at Smart Social. It's a real need that you're filling out there, and we're grateful for it.
Thank you so much. To all of our audience members, remember, it's all about a little bit of safety, and I want to encourage you, there are dialogue starters if you come out to our Parent Night events. Not only are there giveaways, we give away every single week. Congratulations to this week's winners. They won a Kindle. We've got 3D printers we give away and Bluetooth speakers. All you have to do is attend the events, learn how to protect your kids, and there's something that you win every single week. And in addition, parents, what you're going to learn is some of these live events. And what I know the superintendent and I truly believe in is the number one safety app in the world is a rich dialogue you have with your kids. That relationship you have with your kids so that they see something unfortunate online, they come to you. That's what we all are dreaming for and wishing for. That's what the predators don't want you to know. They don't want you to have a great relationship with your kids. And that's what we're fighting for, is to keep your kids safe with that wonderful relationship so they have a few trusted adults to go to, you being the first one. And then also the people at school love your kids, whether it's the principal, the counselor, the teacher. Let's have all those relationships so we can become a village, surround your kids, and help them. That's what we're here to do. Thanks to everybody who supports it. Shout out to the amazing team in 7+ states who's putting together these live events at smartsocial.com. It takes an army and a village to produce these. We'll see all of you on the next episode. Have a great rest of the day. Thanks for spending time with the smartsocial.com podcast. If today's insights were useful, please share the episode with a fellow parent or educator and subscribe so you never miss our next conversation. And parents, make sure to join one of our next live online events each week to keep your family safe and also enter for a chance to win cool prizes. You can learn more at smartsocial.com. I'm your host, Josh Oakes, and parents, remember to keep it light, bright, and polite because your kids are watching what you're doing online. I'll see you on the next episode.